Don Miguel Ruiz was a Mexican surgeon whose life changed completely after a near-death experience. This profound encounter transformed him from a medical doctor into a spiritual teacher, bridging the gap between modern medicine and ancient Toltec wisdom traditions. Born into a family of curanderos, healers, in rural Mexico, Ruiz grew up surrounded by shamanic traditions. His mother was a curandera, and his grandfather was a nagual, a Toltec master of transformation and spiritual guidance. The Toltecs were an ancient Mesoamerican civilization that flourished in central Mexico over 1,000 years ago. Unlike other ancient cultures focused primarily on external achievements, they developed sophisticated methods for exploring consciousness and achieving personal freedom. Toltec knowledge centers on the understanding that humans create their own suffering through false beliefs and agreements about reality. These masters discovered that changing our internal agreements could completely transform our experience of life. From the moment we're born, society begins a process Ruiz calls domestication. Like training animals, families, schools, religions, and cultural institutions teach us how to think, feel, and behave according to their rules and expectations. This domestication creates what Ruiz terms the parasite of the mind, an internal voice that constantly judges, criticizes, and punishes us. This mental parasite feeds on our attention and grows stronger through worry, self-doubt, and negative thinking. The domestication process installs an internal judge that prosecutes us relentlessly for not meeting impossible standards. Alongside this, judge lives an internal victim that suffers from this constant self-abuse and seeks sympathy from others. Most of our emotional suffering doesn't come from external events, but from the stories and judgments our conditioned mind creates about those events. We literally torture ourselves with our own thoughts and beliefs. The beautiful truth Ruiz reveals is that since these limiting beliefs are simply agreements we learned, we have the power to make new agreements that serve our happiness and freedom instead of our suffering. The 4 agreements represent a practical code of conduct that can rapidly transform our experience from one of suffering and limitation to one of freedom and joy. These aren't complex psychological theories, but simple, actionable principles. The first agreement states, "Be impeccable with your word." This means using your power of speech to express truth, love, and beauty, rather than spreading poison through gossip, lies, complaints, and self-criticism. Words possess tremendous creative power. They can heal or destroy, elevate or diminish, create connection or separation. When we speak, we're literally casting spells that shape reality for ourselves and others around us. Most people use words carelessly, spreading gossip, complaining constantly, and speaking harshly about themselves and others. This creates a toxic environment that perpetuates suffering and keeps everyone trapped in negative patterns. Being impeccable with your word means saying only what you mean, avoiding gossip and lies, and refusing to use your voice to speak against yourself or others. It's about integrity in communication. When you practice this agreement, you stop participating in the collective spreading of emotional poison. Your words become medicine instead of toxins, healing rather than harming everyone they touch, including yourself. Self-talk transforms dramatically when you become impeccable with your word. Instead of mental abuse and criticism, you speak to yourself with the same kindness and respect you would offer a beloved friend. The second agreement declares, "Don't take anything personally." This principle recognizes that whatever others do and say reflects their own reality, beliefs, and emotional state, never the truth about you personally. When someone criticizes, insults, or rejects you, they're expressing their own pain, programming, and perspective. Their words and actions are filtered through their own experiences, fears, and limitations, not objective truth about you. Taking things personally is what Ruiz calls the maximum expression of selfishness, because we assume everything others do is about us, when it's actually about their own internal world and struggles. This agreement doesn't mean becoming passive or allowing abuse. It means understanding that others' behavior reflects their consciousness level, not your worth, so you can respond from wisdom rather than wounded ego. When you stop taking things personally, you become immune to the opinions and actions of others. This immunity frees enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy that was previously wasted on defensiveness and reaction. Relationships transform when you don't take your partner's moods personally. You can offer support without absorbing their emotional states, maintaining your own equilibrium while still being compassionate and loving. The third agreement states, don't make assumptions. Human beings constantly fill in gaps in their knowledge with assumptions, then believe these assumptions are absolute truth, creating unnecessary drama and conflict. We make assumptions because asking questions requires courage and vulnerability. It's easier to pretend we know what others think and feel than to risk the discomfort of genuine inquiry. These assumptions often involve mind-reading attempts, assuming we know others' motivations, feelings, and intentions without ever actually asking them directly. We create entire stories based on our imagination, then react to these fictional narratives. The antidote to assumptions is developing the courage to ask questions and express your needs clearly. Questions like, "What do you mean?" and "Help me understand" can prevent most relationship conflicts. Clear, honest communication replaces the guesswork that destroys relationships. Instead of assuming your partner is angry at you, you simply ask what they're feeling and what they need. This agreement requires overcoming the fear of appearing ignorant or vulnerable. It means choosing clarity over the illusion of knowing, connection over the safety of assumptions. The fourth agreement proclaims, always do your best. This doesn't demand perfection, but rather your authentic best effort, given your current circumstances, energy level, and capacity in each moment. Your best will vary dramatically from day to day, hour to hour. Sometimes your best is extraordinary, other times it's simply showing up. Both are valid and worthy of respect. When you always do your best, you eliminate self-judgment and regret because you know you gave what you had to give. There's no basis for the internal critic to attack you. This agreement prevents both laziness and perfectionism. You can't be lazy because you're committed to your best effort, but you can't be perfectionistic because your best is enough. Doing your best also means you won't waste energy judging others who aren't meeting your standards. You understand that they, like you, are doing their best with their current level of awareness. These four agreements work together as an integrated system. Each agreement supports and amplifies the others, creating a foundation for authentic living and genuine happiness that no external circumstance can shake. The first agreement, impeccable word, provides the tool for breaking old, limiting beliefs and creating new, empowering ones through conscious use of language and internal dialogue. The second agreement, don't take things personally, creates emotional immunity, protecting you from others' negativity while keeping your heart open to genuine love and connection. The third agreement, don't make assumptions, establishes clear communication as the foundation for all healthy relationships, preventing the misunderstandings that create most interpersonal conflicts and suffering. The fourth agreement, always do your best, ensures authentic action while maintaining self-compassion, creating the perfect balance between effort and acceptance. Practicing these agreements requires consistent attention and commitment. Old patterns of thinking and reacting have deep roots and will resist change with surprising intensity and creativity. The process isn't about perfection, but about awareness. Each time you notice yourself breaking an agreement, you have an opportunity to choose differently, gradually rewiring your brain's automatic responses. Transformation happens gradually, like learning to walk or ride a bicycle. At first, conscious effort is required for every step, but eventually these new patterns become natural and automatic. Setbacks are normal and expected parts of the growth process. Instead of judging yourself harshly when you fall back into old patterns, simply notice what happened and recommit to the practice. The agreements work by addressing the root cause of suffering rather than just managing symptoms. Instead of temporary relief, they offer permanent transformation of your relationship with yourself and life. Ruiz's background as a surgeon serves his teaching well. He approaches emotional and spiritual healing with the same precision he once brought to physical operations, identifying exactly what needs to be removed. The book presents ancient wisdom in accessible, practical language that anyone can understand and apply immediately. There's no need for years of study or special training to begin benefiting from these principles. Unlike many self-help approaches that add more concepts and techniques, the 4 agreements work through subtraction, removing false beliefs rather than accumulating more knowledge. Children especially respond to these teachings because they haven't yet forgotten their natural state of freedom. Adults must unlearn what they've been conditioned to believe about themselves and reality. The agreements transcend cultural and religious boundaries because they address universal human experiences, communication, emotional reactivity, assumptions, and the relationship between effort and self-acceptance. Millions of readers worldwide report dramatic improvements in their relationships, work satisfaction, and overall life experience after implementing these 4 simple but powerful principles. The book's enduring popularity stems from its effectiveness rather than its complexity. These principles work not because they're sophisticated, but because they're true and practical. Ruiz explains that we live in a dream, not just at night, but during our waking hours. This dream consists of all the beliefs, opinions, and agreements we've accepted about ourselves and reality. Most people live in what he calls the dream of the planet, a collective nightmare of fear, judgment, and limitation shared by most of humanity. This shared dream feels normal because everyone participates. Personal freedom comes from awakening from this collective dream and choosing your own agreements about what's possible and true. You become the artist of your own life rather than a victim of circumstances. The domestication process teaches us to dream the same nightmare as everyone else. We learn to judge ourselves and others, to fear rejection, and to believe we're not enough as we are. Breaking free from domestication requires recognizing that most of what we believe about ourselves isn't true. It's just programming we received from others who were also programmed. The internal judge that criticizes us constantly isn't our voice. It's the voice of all the people who judged us throughout our lives. We can choose to stop listening to this external chorus. Self-love becomes possible when we stop believing the lies domestication taught us about our inadequacy. We begin to see ourselves as we truly are, perfect expressions of life itself. Ruiz emphasizes that the goal isn't to control others or change external circumstances, but to change our internal agreements about what external circumstances mean and how much power they have over us. Freedom comes not from getting what we want, but from no longer needing external validation, approval, or specific outcomes to feel whole and worthy. The agreements create what Ruiz calls heaven on earth, not a place you go to after death, but a state of consciousness available right now through conscious choice. Hell, in this understanding, isn't a punishment after death, but the state of consciousness created by false beliefs, self-judgment, and emotional reactions to others' behavior. We can choose heaven or hell in every moment through the agreements we make about what's happening and what it means about us. The first agreement transforms your relationship with language from unconscious habit to conscious creation. You begin using words as tools for building rather than destroying. Gossip loses its appeal when you understand its true cost. Speaking negatively about others creates negative energy that ultimately harms the speaker more than the target. Complaining transforms into requesting when you become impeccable with your word. Instead of spreading negativity about problems, you clearly communicate what you need or want changed. Self-criticism becomes self-encouragement as you apply the first agreement internally. The voice in your head becomes your ally rather than your enemy. The second agreement eliminates the victim mentality that keeps so many people trapped in resentment and blame. You realize that others' behavior says everything about them and nothing about you. Emotional immunity develops as you stop absorbing others' moods and energies. You can be compassionate without taking on their emotional burdens as if they were your own. Relationships improve dramatically when partners stop taking each other's moods, words, and actions personally. Love flows more freely when it's not contaminated by defensive reactions. The need to defend yourself disappears when you don't take things personally. There's nothing to defend because you know others' opinions don't determine your worth or truth. The third agreement prevents most relationship conflicts before they begin. Clear communication eliminates the misunderstandings that create most arguments and hurt feelings. Assumptions in relationships often involve expecting others to know what we want without our telling them. This mind-reading expectation creates frustration and resentment when others inevitably fail to meet unstated needs. The courage to ask for what you want directly replaces the passive-aggressive communication that poisons so many relationships. Honesty becomes more important than being polite or avoiding discomfort. Listening improves when you stop assuming you know what others mean. You become genuinely curious about their perspective rather than waiting for your turn to speak. The fourth agreement balances effort with acceptance perfectly. You give your genuine best while accepting that your best is enough even when results don't match expectations. Perfectionism dissolves when you embrace the reality that your best varies with circumstances. Some days your best is extraordinary, other days it's simply showing up with good intentions. Self-forgiveness flows naturally from doing your best. Regret becomes impossible when you know you gave what you had to give with your current level of awareness and energy. Competition with others becomes irrelevant when your standard is your own best effort rather than others' achievements. You're running your own race at your own pace. The energy previously wasted on self-judgment becomes available for creativity, love, and service. Without the internal critic consuming your attention, life becomes much more enjoyable and productive. Integration of the agreements happens through daily practice rather than intellectual understanding. Like learning a musical instrument, consistent practice gradually creates mastery and natural expression. Old patterns resist change intensely because they've become neural pathways strengthened by years of repetition. Patience and persistence are essential as new pathways develop. Each moment of conscious choice to follow the agreements strengthens your ability to choose consciously in the next moment. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to rewire itself through consistent practice. Meditation and mindfulness practices support the agreements by developing the awareness necessary to catch old patterns before they take control of your thoughts and actions. The agreements work whether you believe in their spiritual origins or not. They're practical psychological principles that improve mental health and relationships regardless of your worldview. Scientific research supports what Ruiz teaches about the power of words, the impact of assumptions, and the importance of not taking things personally for mental and emotional well-being. Neuroscience confirms that negative self-talk creates actual neural pathways of suffering, while positive, truthful self-talk builds pathways of resilience and well-being. The agreements align with positive psychology's findings about what creates genuine happiness, authentic relationships, meaningful work, personal growth, and contribution to something larger than oneself. Cognitive behavioral therapy echoes these principles by focusing on changing thought patterns and assumptions to improve emotional states and relationship satisfaction. The effectiveness of the agreements doesn't depend on complex psychological theories, but on their practical application in daily life. Simple doesn't mean easy, but it does mean accessible. Cultural background doesn't affect the agreement's effectiveness, because they address universal human experiences transcending race, religion, nationality, and social status. Parents who practice the agreements model emotional maturity for their children, potentially breaking generational patterns of dysfunction and creating healthier family dynamics. Children naturally embody these principles until domestication teaches them otherwise. Adults can learn from children's natural authenticity, emotional honesty, and ability to live in the present moment. Schools implementing these principles report improved student behavior, better academic performance, and reduced bullying as children learn emotional intelligence alongside academic subjects. Workplace environments transform when employees practice the agreements. Communication improves, conflicts decrease, and productivity increases as people focus on solutions rather than blame and defensiveness. Leadership effectiveness increases dramatically when managers don't take employee feedback personally, communicate with impeccability, avoid assumptions, and consistently do their best. Customer service improves when representatives understand that angry customers are expressing their own frustration rather than making personal attacks on the service provider. Healthcare providers who practice the agreements experience less burnout and more job satisfaction by maintaining healthy boundaries while providing compassionate care. The agreements offer a practical approach to conflict resolution that works in families, workplaces, and communities by addressing the root causes rather than just managing symptoms. Social media interactions become more positive when people apply these principles online, avoiding the trap of taking others' posts personally or making assumptions about their intentions. Political discourse could improve dramatically if participants followed the agreements, focusing on issues rather than personal attacks and seeking understanding rather than making assumptions about opponents' motivations. The book has been translated into dozens of languages because its principles resonate across cultural boundaries, addressing universal human needs for authenticity, connection, and inner peace. Criticism of the book often focuses on its simplicity, with some arguing that complex psychological problems require more sophisticated solutions than 4 basic principles. However, millions of transformed lives suggest that sometimes the most profound solutions are the simplest ones, accessible to everyone regardless of education or economic status. The agreements don't replace professional therapy when needed, but they provide a foundation of emotional health that supports any healing process. Mental health professionals increasingly recognize the value of these principles as preventive medicine for emotional and psychological problems. The book's longevity and bestseller lists demonstrates ongoing hunger for practical wisdom that actually works rather than complex theories that remain in the realm of intellectual understanding. Readers often report that returning to the book repeatedly reveals new layers of meaning, as their growing practice deepens their understanding of each principle. The agreements prove both simple enough for children and profound enough for adults who have spent decades in psychological and spiritual exploration. Success with the agreements doesn't require perfection, but rather honest effort and self-compassion when you inevitably fall back into old patterns during the learning process. The practice becomes easier over time as new neural pathways strengthen and old patterns of reaction weaken through lack of reinforcement. Community support helps maintain practice of the agreements, whether through book clubs, online groups, or informal discussions with friends. Sharing the journey accelerates progress. The agreements create ripple effects that extend far beyond the individual practitioner. As one person changes, their improved relationships and interactions affect everyone in their sphere of influence. Families report dramatic improvements in communication and connection when even one member begins practicing the principles consistently with patience and commitment. Marriages are revitalized as partners stop taking each other's moods personally, communicate more clearly, speak more kindly, and focus on their own behavior rather than trying to change each other. The agreements don't eliminate all problems, but change your relationship to problems so they become opportunities for growth rather than sources of victimhood and suffering. Emotional resilience increases as you stop depending on others' approval or behavior for your sense of worth and well-being. Inner stability develops that no external circumstance can shake. Creativity flourishes when the inner critic is silenced through impeccable self-talk and the willingness to do your best without demanding perfection from yourself or others. Decision-making becomes clearer when you're not worried about others' opinions, when you seek clarity rather than making assumptions, and when you're committed to authentic rather than perfect choices. The agreements work regardless of your spiritual or religious beliefs because they're practical life skills rather than dogmatic teachings requiring specific faith or worship practices. They complement rather than contradict most spiritual traditions, providing practical methods for living the love, compassion, and wisdom that all major religions and philosophies recommend. The book serves as a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern psychology, translating timeless principles into language and concepts accessible to contemporary minds. Ruiz's medical background lends credibility to his spiritual teachings, demonstrating that these principles work for practical, scientifically minded people, not just those already inclined toward mystical thinking. The agreements offer hope for human transformation on both individual and collective levels, suggesting that widespread adoption could create more peaceful, authentic communities and societies. Environmental activism becomes more effective when practitioners don't take opposition personally, communicate with integrity, avoid assumptions about others' motivations, and consistently do their best. Social justice work benefits from these principles by helping activists maintain their emotional balance and effectiveness while addressing systemic problems without becoming consumed by anger or righteousness. The agreements prevent burnout in helping professions by maintaining healthy boundaries, realistic expectations, and internal sources of validation rather than depending on clients' progress for self-worth. International relations could improve if diplomats and leaders practice these principles, focusing on clear communication and mutual understanding rather than assumptions and personal reactions. The book's influence extends beyond individual self-help to organizational development, with companies using the principles to improve workplace culture and team effectiveness. Educational reform benefits from these concepts as teachers learn to model emotional intelligence and create classroom environments based on respect rather than fear. The agreements offer practical tools for parenting that help raise emotionally healthy children who maintain their natural authenticity while learning to navigate social expectations. Addiction recovery programs incorporate these principles because they address the underlying beliefs and thought patterns that often contribute to addictive behaviors. Grief counseling utilizes the agreements to help people process loss without taking death personally or making assumptions about what their loved one's death means about them. The book's wisdom applies to all life transitions, helping people navigate change with greater ease by focusing on what they can control, their agreements, rather than trying to control external circumstances. Retirement becomes an opportunity for renewal rather than decline, when people don't take aging personally and continue doing their best within changing physical limitations. Chronic illness management improves when patients don't take their condition personally and focus on doing their best with their current health status, rather than demanding perfection. The agreements help people facing discrimination maintain their dignity and inner peace while working for social change, avoiding the trap of internalizing others' prejudiced views. Financial stress decreases when people don't take economic circumstances personally and focus on doing their best with available resources, rather than comparing themselves to others. The book provides comfort during times of loss and uncertainty by offering stable principles that remain valid regardless of changing external circumstances. Career changes become less stressful when people don't take professional setbacks personally and maintain clear communication about their needs and goals. The agreements support healthy aging by helping older adults maintain their sense of worth and purpose while adapting to physical and social changes. Technology use improves when people apply these principles to digital communication, avoiding online arguments and maintaining authenticity in virtual relationships. Travel experiences become richer when people don't take cultural differences personally and avoid making assumptions about foreign customs and behaviours. Sports and competition become more enjoyable when participants focus on doing their best, rather than winning at all costs or taking opponents' strategies personally. Artistic expression flourishes when creators don't take criticism personally and focus on authentic expression rather than trying to please everyone. The agreements help people navigate medical treatment by maintaining clear communication with healthcare providers while not taking illness or treatment challenges personally. They provide a framework for ethical decision-making that considers the impact of words and actions on others while maintaining personal integrity and authenticity. The book offers practical spirituality that doesn't require belief in specific deities or religious practices, but focuses on developing wisdom, compassion, and inner peace. Scientific inquiry benefits from these principles by helping researchers maintain objectivity, communicate findings clearly, and persist in their best efforts despite setbacks and criticism. The agreements support environmental consciousness by helping people see their connection to nature without taking ecological problems personally while doing their best to live responsibly. They provide a foundation for social activism that maintains love and compassion for all people, including those whose views and actions one opposes. The book's teachings help people navigate social media mindfully, avoiding the trap of taking others' posts personally while communicating with integrity online. Emergency responders and healthcare workers use these principles to maintain emotional balance while dealing with trauma and human suffering daily. The agreements support healthy sexuality by encouraging honest communication, eliminating assumptions about partners' desires, and maintaining self-respect in intimate relationships. They help people facing legal challenges maintain their emotional equilibrium while dealing with stressful court proceedings and potential injustices. Financial advisors and business professionals apply these principles to maintain ethical practices and clear communication with clients while not taking market fluctuations personally. The book provides guidance for dealing with difficult people by understanding that their behavior reflects their own programming rather than your worth or character. They offer a framework for forgiveness that doesn't require condoning harmful behavior, but rather releasing the emotional charge that keeps you trapped in resentment. The agreements help people maintain sobriety and addiction recovery by providing healthy thought patterns and communication skills that support long-term healing. They support people dealing with mental illness by offering practical tools for managing thoughts and reactions that complement professional treatment. The book provides comfort to those experiencing discrimination or prejudice by helping them maintain their sense of worth despite others' ignorant or harmful attitudes. International students and immigrants benefit from these principles when adapting to new cultures, avoiding taking cultural differences personally while maintaining their authentic identity. The agreements help people navigate divorce and separation by maintaining focus on their own behavior and communication rather than trying to control or change their former partner. They provide guidance for people in caring professions, helping them maintain compassion without absorbing their clients' emotional states as if they were their own. The book offers practical wisdom for handling criticism and feedback, whether in personal relationships or professional settings, by focusing on useful information rather than personal attacks. Military personnel and veterans use these principles to process difficult experiences and maintain emotional balance during deployment and reintegration into civilian life. The agreements help people dealing with chronic pain or disability maintain their sense of agency and self-worth despite physical limitations and others' potentially ignorant responses. They provide a framework for healthy competition that focuses on personal best performance rather than defeating others or taking opponents' success personally. The book offers guidance for people in leadership positions, helping them communicate effectively, make decisions without taking criticism personally, and maintain authentic authority. Emergency situation management benefits from these principles by helping people stay calm, communicate clearly, and focus on appropriate action rather than emotional reaction. The agreements support people going through major life transitions by providing stable principles that remain valid regardless of changing circumstances. They help people maintain healthy relationships with adult children and aging parents by avoiding assumptions and maintaining clear, respectful communication across generational differences. The book provides practical tools for managing stress and anxiety by addressing the thought patterns and beliefs that often fuel these emotional states. Professional athletes and performers use these principles to maintain confidence and focus despite public criticism and competitive pressure. The agreements help people navigate workplace politics and difficult colleagues by maintaining their integrity while not taking others' behavior personally. They offer guidance for people facing terminal illness or supporting loved ones through end-of-life processes, helping maintain dignity and peace during difficult times. The book provides a foundation for ethical business practices that consider the impact of decisions and communication on all stakeholders. People in sales and customer service professions benefit from these principles by maintaining authenticity while not taking rejection or criticism personally. The agreements help people manage their relationship with money and material possessions without taking financial status personally or making assumptions about what wealth means. They support people dealing with infertility, miscarriage, or other reproductive challenges by helping them avoid taking these experiences as personal failures or judgments. The book offers practical wisdom for navigating extended family dynamics and holiday gatherings by maintaining authenticity while avoiding unnecessary conflict. People working in conflict resolution and mediation use these principles to facilitate better communication and understanding between opposing parties. The agreements help people maintain healthy boundaries in relationships without building walls that prevent genuine intimacy and connection. They provide guidance for people facing major illness or injury, helping them focus on healing while maintaining their sense of identity and worth. The book supports people in recovery from trauma by offering healthy thought patterns and communication skills that support the healing process. International peacekeeping and humanitarian workers apply these principles to maintain their effectiveness and emotional balance while witnessing and addressing human suffering. The agreements help people navigate online dating and modern relationship challenges by maintaining authenticity while avoiding assumptions and taking rejection personally. They offer guidance for people dealing with workplace harassment or discrimination, helping them maintain their dignity while addressing inappropriate behavior. The book provides practical tools for managing anger and conflict in all relationships by addressing the underlying beliefs and thought patterns that fuel emotional reactions. People in teaching and mentoring roles use these principles to maintain patience and effectiveness while helping others learn and grow. The agreements support people dealing with empty nest syndrome, retirement, or other major life transitions by maintaining their sense of purpose and identity. They help people maintain healthy skepticism and critical thinking while remaining open to new ideas and perspectives without taking disagreement personally. The book offers guidance for people facing natural disasters or other emergencies, helping them maintain emotional balance while focusing on appropriate action. Political activists and social reformers benefit from these principles by maintaining their passion for justice while avoiding the burnout that comes from taking opposition personally. The agreements help people navigate the challenges of modern technology and social media while maintaining authentic relationships and clear communication. They provide a foundation for lifelong learning and personal growth that remains valid regardless of age, circumstances, or life experience. The book's ultimate gift lies not in its complexity, but in its elegant simplicity. 4 principles that can transform any life willing to practice them consistently. Millions of readers worldwide continue to discover that these ancient Toltec principles offer practical solutions to contemporary problems and timeless wisdom for modern challenges. The four agreements endure because they address permanent features of human experience rather than temporary cultural issues, providing guidance that remains relevant across time and cultures. Whether you approach the book as spiritual wisdom, psychological principles, or practical life skills, the agreements offer tools for creating more authentic, peaceful, and joyful existence. Don Miguel Ruiz's greatest contribution may be his translation of ancient wisdom into accessible principles that anyone can understand and apply, regardless of background or beliefs.